I have seen A Silent Voice a total of 7 times. I pretty much rewatch this movie every single year. And the reason I keep going back to this movie year after year is because of the protagonist, Shoya Ishida. Shoya's struggle with mental health, self-love, and redemption is why I relate to Shoya so much and why I think he's one of the most relatable characters in all of anime. Not only is he relatable, but also has one of the most inspiring character arcs, which has impacted me for the better and also inspired me to change as a person. We open A Silent Voice by seeing Shoya planning to off himself. He gives his mom all the money that he has, he quits his job, and has almost ripped up his whole entire calendar, with him only leaving the first 15 days of that certain month, with of course the 15th being the last day that he plans to be alive. But before seeing Shoya potentially unalive himself, we go back to Shoya's childhood, just to see how Shoya ended up in such a bad and depressed state in the first place. Shoya was very popular, he had tons of friends, and he was considered the class clown. He really was just enjoying his life and just being a kid. But all of that changes when he meets Shoko Nishimiya, a deaf girl that transfers to his school. And of course, with Shoko being deaf, she struggles to make friends, really just struggling to communicate with others as a whole, and she becomes a huge inconvenience to the other kids in her class. The kids have to start learning sign language. Also, things like music class drastically change because of Shoko's disability. And to top it all off, Shoko gets special treatment from her teachers. And of course, none of this is Shoko's fault, but it still does make her a very easy target when it comes to bullying. And that's why Shoko starts getting bullied, mainly by Shoya. As I just mentioned a second ago, Shoko's an easy target, and Shoya sees Shoko as an opportunity to get some giggles and laughs out of his friends and really fulfill his role as a class clown. After breaking 8 sets of hearing aids and embarrassing and just doing downright horrible things to Shoko for so long, we finally see Shoya getting shit for it, but not only that, he takes all of the blame for Shoko's bullying, as he was ratted out and blamed by all of his best friends, which of course Shoya was the main bully, but pretty much all of Shoya's friends also participated when it came to bullying Shoko. And Shoya loses all of his friends in the process. Shoya bullied Shoko so bad that he made her legit transfer schools. So since Shoko leaves, the class needs a new target, and Shoya becomes that target. As all of Shoya's friends and the rest of the kids in his class paint Shoya as the bad guy so they can all stand on this moral high ground and feel better about themselves, with Shoya just experiencing some awful bullying himself. And it's because of this bullying that Shoya experiences, he comes to truly realize how much of an asshole he just was and how bad he truly did hurt Shoko, along with all of his friends and everyone around him in his life painting him as this bad, evil person. So he truly starts to believe that he is just like a garbage human being, and because of that, he comes to hate himself. And that's why we see him at the start of the story planning to unalive himself, because he's just so fed up with life and himself. We then jump to the present. Shoya ends up going to Shoko's sign language class to once again see Shoko after so many years. And in Shoya's own words, he goes to see Shoko to simply tie up loose ends. But I truly think that Shoya went to see Shoko to somewhat redeem himself, as he legit had no loose ends to tie up. Shoko does run away from Shoya at first, and the conversation is pretty awkward at first as well, but things do end off on a good note. Shoya shows off his sign language to Shoko. He even asks her if she would be his friend, which is a very strange thing for Shoya to say considering the history that he has with Shoko. But this is Shoya's way of apologizing to Shoko about all the shitty things that he did to her when they were kids. And Shoko just starts bawling her eyes out, because Shoko never hated Shoya. Even after all the bullying that she experienced from him, she still wanted to be friends with Shoya. So everything has completely come full circle between these two. And you would think this would give Shoya the closure that he needs to go through with his plan of unaliving himself. Because like I mentioned just a second ago, the real reason that Shoya was seeking out Shoko again was to make himself feel better before he died. We actually cut to seeing Shoya waking up at his house the next day, aka him not going through with ending his life, with Shoya's mom confronting Shoya about his strange behavior the same morning, and when Shoya confirms to her that he really did plan to remove himself from this world, she just loses her mind, because of course she deeply cares about Shoya. This is her son we're talking about. She tells Shoya, like, what would I do if you ended up actually going through with unaliving yourself? Like, I would be devastated. And she makes Shoya swear to her that he will not end his life no matter what. And to Shoya, this is enough. This confrontation with his mom shows him that people in his life deeply care and love him. So we see Shoya keep enduring through his life with just his horrible mental health. And this is the first time in the movie that we truly see just how bad Shoya's mental health is. When Shoya goes to school, we see all of his peers have a giant purple X on their face. This is to symbolize Shoya's loneliness and how he purposefully isolates and cuts himself off from every single person around him. As Shoya walks through his school halls, he just stares at the ground, not being able to look people in the eye as he's worried about what they might think of him, or maybe they'll judge him or something along those lines. We also see Shoya cover his ears so that way he can block out all the noise and conversations going on around him. And to me, this is the most relatable thing when it comes to Shoya's character, his extreme social anxiety. And for anyone wondering, yes, I do have very bad social anxiety, and I've had it since I was a little kid, which I know it doesn't really make sense because I'm putting my face on the internet and making these videos for thousands of people to see, but I'll just get into all of that towards the end of the video. But now going back to Shoya. When we see Shoya get to his class, he looks around at his classmates and his insecurities just start to pile up. As Shoya looks around his classroom at all of his classmates, there's this little voice in his head telling him that they're all calling him a freak and some lonely loser. It'd be better if he just didn't live. Now, of course, none of Shoya's classmates are actually thinking this. This is just all in Shoya's head. This is what he is telling himself. It's just like me or anyone watching this video, or really any human to ever exist. We all have insecurities. Whatever those insecurities are, they can just absolutely eat us alive and destroy our well-being. Well, that is exactly the case for Shoya. Shoya's isolation plus his insecurities make him just hate himself. Shoya hates himself so much to the point that he thinks the world would be better off if he just didn't exist. Things do start to look up for Shoya though, as he gains his first real friend in years, Tomohiro Nagasuga. And how they become friends is because one day a random kid is just begging Tomohiro to let him borrow his bike. And the reason this kid is begging Tomohiro to lend over his bike is because the kid intends to steal it. And Tomohiro is not stupid. He can tell this kid wants to steal it, and he's like, no, I'm not giving my bike, and he gets a little defensive. This causes a altercation to happen, and Shoya reluctantly decides to step in and decides to offer the kid his bike instead. That way, the kid will just leave Tomohiro alone. Shoya's bike ends up getting stolen. But as Shoya is walking home from school that day, he ends up running into Tomohiro, with Tomohiro somehow finding Shoya's bike and returning it to him. And the moment that Tomohiro returns Shoya's bike, the X just drops off of Tomohiro's face. At this point in time, Shoya has accepted Tomohiro into his life. He gains trust in Tomohiro just from this one encounter, with Shoya actively trying to communicate with him going forward. Tomohiro ends up being the friend that Shoya always needed, as Tomohiro just sticks to Shoya 24/7, becoming that one friend that is just a little bit too clingy, which is good because it forces Shoya to communicate with Tomohiro almost all the time, and it never gives Shoya the chance to even think about isolating himself again from Tomohiro. We then see Shoya once again go see Shoko, but Shoko's sister Yuzuru is with her this time. She's like, nope, I'm not letting you get your grimy fingers on my sister. And Shoya has already tried once to see Shoko, but he couldn't because Yuzuru didn't let him. So this is the second time now where Shoya cannot see Shoko. But just before he gives up, the man himself, Tomohiro, shows up and sticks up for Shoya. And then we finally see Shoya interact with Shoko again. With this being a reoccurring thing, with Shoya and Shoko becoming pretty good friends. Shoya even gets on good terms with Yuzuru, and this little friend group starts to form. The next person to join Shoya's friend group is a girl named Miyoko, who was a girl that Shoya and Shoko both knew back in their elementary school days. And then the next thing you know, another person joins the group, and then another person joins the group, until we get this big group with about 8 or 9 people. So Shoya is starting to put himself out there again and just really communicate with so many people, starting to self-isolate less and less the more we get into this story. Shortly after the friend group is formed, we see all of them go to a theme park for the day, and we see Shoya genuinely have fun for the first time in years, since he was a kid. Shoya has been suffering for so long that he legit has forgot the concept of having fun. And as Shoya experiences this theme park with all of his new friends, going on all these cool rides and just having a really fun, good time, he starts to question what he is feeling. We see Shoya realize that he hasn't felt this good in so long, and he wishes the day could just last forever, that he could always just feel this happy. And I would say this is the first time in the story that we are really seeing Shoya be happy and just really enjoy life in general. Sure, like, things have drastically improved in Shoya's life, like him having all these new friends, reconnecting with Shoko again, and kind of like self-redeeming himself. But he's never truly been happy until this moment at the theme park. But it all has to get ruined by Naoka, who is like Miyoko in the sense that Shoya and Shoko both knew Naoka from their elementary school days. But Naoka was one of the kids who ratted out and snitched on Shoya, and also used to participate in bullying Shoko. So I don't even really know why Shoya felt the need to reunite with Naoka and also integrate her into this new friend group. Either way though, she of course ruins the theme park day for Shoya, and really the whole entire group if I'm being honest. Naoka gets Shoya to run into and reunite with Kazuki again, which used to be Shoya's best friend and eventually became the main person who bullied Shoya. In reality, Kazuki basically did ruin Shoya's life. So when Shoya sees Kazuki again, all the self-hatred, all the bad memories and experiences all just come to Shoya at once, reminding him of his past and just how horrible it was. And that happy, just amazing mood that Shoya was in just vanishes, with Shoya's day just being completely ruined. And to make matters worse, Naoka doesn't only ruin the day for Shoya, but also ruins it for Shoko. Naoka then decides to ride the Ferris wheel with only Shoko, so it's only Shoko and Naoka. And while they are in this Ferris wheel, Naoka straight up tells Shoko, like, you ruined Shoya's life, and that Naoka will always hate Shoko no matter what. And Shoya comes to find out about every single thing that Naoka said to Shoko on that Ferris wheel, and he starts to feel bad. And one thing leads to another, and Shoya gets really in his own head because he's the one that reconnected with Naoka and integrated her into this friend group when he knows he shouldn't have. And the self-hatred that he has slowly just starts to creep back in and show itself again, with him just wanting Shoko to be happy. At first, Shoya's motivation for seeing Shoko was to redeem himself. He wanted to make himself feel better about the horrible things that he did as a kid before he planned to unalive himself at the start of the movie. But when Shoya keeps seeing Shoko more and more, developing a very strong friendship with her, his motivations slowly start to change, where Shoya starts to care less and less about self-redemption and more so just about making Shoko be happy. As Shoya knows that Shoko is pretty much always suffering all the time, whether that be from her own self-hatred or all the bullying that she deals with because of her disability. He just wants all of her suffering to end, and he will do anything that it takes to make her suffering end. But things only continue to get worse for Shoya. As when Shoya and the others return to school, rumors start to spread around the friend group about Shoya and how badly he bullied Shoko when they were kids. The one spreading these rumors is Miki's bitch ass, and we see Shoya confront Miki about this, and it ends up causing a scene, with Miki telling Tomohiro and Shitoshi that Shoya was just awful to Shoko when they were kids. And this confrontation ends up getting to the point where it gets so loud that Shoya's whole entire class is overhearing Miki say all this bad stuff about Shoya. So Miki is just bad-mouthing Shoya to legit all of their peers. But instead of Shoya defending himself, he just runs away. Like, he legit just leaves class and bikes to some random bridge, where he just kind of stares into the water for like an hour or so, and he starts to reflect on himself as a person, with him saying that he really does hate himself. So like, all of his self-hatred at this point is just back. Like, Shoya is just as bad now as he was at the beginning of the movie. Later that day, we see Shoya meet up with everyone, with Miki and Shoya trying to make up after their first confrontation. But once again, things go nowhere and just really end up in another confrontation, with Miki standing on her moral high ground and thinking that she is better than Shoya, when in reality, she also bullied Shoko when they were kids, so she really is not better than Shoya whatsoever. And Naoka actually calls this out and calls Miki on her bullshit, saying how it's stupid that everyone blamed Shoya for Shoko's bullying when in reality they all participated in it, and how it happened years ago. They were like 12, 11 years old. Now they're 17, 18. Things have changed, which for the first time in this movie, I actually agree with Naoka and her actions taken here. Naoka threw up the perfect alley-oop to Shoya, and instead of dunking the ball, he just missed the entire basket. And what I mean by this is that Naoka is legit giving Shoya the perfect opportunity to defend himself, which Shoya should be doing in the situation. Shoya obviously is a changed person, and he's not the same little evil asshole that he used to be. But instead, he does the opposite. He decides to blame himself for everything that happened to Shoko back in elementary school and tells everyone, hey, it's all my fault. Everything's always my fault, just let it be. That way he can get Naoka and Miki to stop fighting. Naoka, being in disbelief on how Shoya didn't even try to defend himself, says she's just sick of this whole entire situation, and then Shoya goes on to insult her. And when Miyoko tries to stand up for Naoka, Shoya then insults Miyoko. And it just gets to the point where Shoya ends up insulting pretty much everyone in this friend group, except for Shoko and Yuzuru. Shoya goes back to isolating himself again, as this is Shoya's way of dealing with his problems. We have seen Shoya do this many times throughout the duration of this movie. Whenever he causes a problem for another person or gets in a confrontation with another person, for example, just like with Miki, he tucks his tail and runs away, completely isolating himself from that certain person. Another reason that Shoya decides to blame himself in the situation is because he just hates himself so much that he doesn't even feel inclined to stand up for himself or say that he's changed or become a better person like most people would do. Shoya truly does believe that he is just the lowest of the low, a truly garbage human being. After this whole confrontation, the friend group ends up breaking apart, with Shoya losing all of his friends, except for Shoko and Yuzuru. Shoya continues to hang out with these two every single day. One day they go to the movies, another day they take a trip to a museum. Shoya ends up joining Shoko and Yuzuru's sign language class. And this continues on for quite some time, where Shoya is excessively hanging out with Shoko and Yuzuru. Unlike before, there was the whole confrontation on the bridge and the friend group fell apart, where Shoya still of course saw these two a lot, but not nearly as much as now. And Shoya is doing all of this to distract himself. Of course, he wishes the friend group never fell apart. Being with those guys was the happiest that Shoya has felt in years. And when Shoya's alone, he drowns in his own thoughts and regrets. And that's why, as I already mentioned, he hangs out with Shoko so much. He hangs out with her so much that he eventually even gets on good terms with Shoko's mother, who just has completely despised Shoya for the whole entire movie up until this point. He then ends up going to see some fireworks with Shoko and the rest of her family. And on this certain night, we see Shoko leave halfway through the fireworks to go study, which is just very strange because, one, there's legit fireworks going on right now, and Shoko waited with Shoya and the rest of her family to see these fireworks. And two, Shoko is on summer break right now. So I think studying is the last thing on her mind, or at least the last thing she has to worry about right now. Shoya also ends up leaving the fireworks early as Yuzuru asks for him to go and retrieve his camera from their house as she wants to take photos of the fireworks. And when Shoya gets to Yuzuru and Shoko's house, we see Shoko attempting to unalive herself, with Shoya jumping right into action. He's running so fast and so focused on reaching Shoko before it's too late that he starts running into all the kitchen furniture, eventually falling over and just yelling for Shoko to please not go through with it. But then she jumps, with Shoya barely just making it and catching her before she hit the ground. And we see Shoya trying to pull Shoko back up to safety, but he's slipping. He doesn't have the strength to hold a whole nother human being, as well as having to worry about himself and making sure that he doesn't fall. As Shoya is trying to pull up Shoko with all of his strength and willpower, he starts to reach out to God, asking him for just one more ounce of strength. He will look people in the eyes. He will listen to others and their conversations, and he will not run away from his problems any longer. He will be better, as long as God can just do this one thing for him. And Shoya isn't a religious character whatsoever. We never once see Shoya say that he believes in a god or a higher divine power being, but he's still reaching out in this moment of desperation. He's willing to do whatever it takes to save Shoko. And I really do love this piece of dialogue from Shoya in this particular moment, as it's just very relatable. I guarantee 99% of people, if they were in just such a horrible bad situation, would attempt to reach out to God or some higher divine being, even if you're not religious or necessarily even believe in a god of some kind. As Shoya gives it one big final pull, using all of his body strength to pull up Shoko, his prayers get answered, as he finally is able to pull up Shoko to safety. But as he pulls her up, he loses his grip and ends up falling himself. Luckily enough, Shoya does survive this fall, but he does get put into a 2-week coma, as well as sustain some pretty bad injuries. But hey, at least he's alive, and the same goes for Shoko. And the scene of Shoya saving Shoko and sacrificing himself in the process is by far the most important scene when it comes to Shoya's character arc and his development, as this is the most selfless act that Shoya could have ever done for Shoko, sacrificing himself for one of his best friends. And this really shows how much Shoya has changed as a person. And I'm not talking about when he was a kid. I'm talking about when we first saw him at the beginning of the story. When we first meet Shoya, he only seeks out Shoko because he wants to redeem himself. Of course, he does apologize and feel bad for what he did to Shoko, but he mainly is there to tie up loose ends and make himself feel better about his life before he plans to end it. But now, in this moment, we truly see Shoya put Shoko ahead of himself. Not because of some self-redemption or moral obligation that he owes to Shoko. No, because he simply cared about making sure that one of his best friends would be okay in one of their worst moments. And to think, the boy we first met at the start of the story, a self-loathing, isolating person, would end up building such a strong bond with another human being to the point where he was willing to sacrifice his own life for theirs, is truly just beautiful writing, and shows how far Shoya has really come. When Shoya wakes up, the first thing he does is go see Shoko. And even though he almost just lost his damn life, he just laughs it off and is just happy that Shoko is okay. In this talk with Shoko, we see Shoya admit to Shoko that he was being selfish, that all the good things he was doing for Shoko's sake was really for his own selfish personal reasons. We then get the Shoko side of things, with her saying that everything's always her fault, and the reason that she was going to unalive herself is because she felt like it would have been better if she just disappeared. And as Shoko is sobbing her eyes out, sprawled up on the ground, confessing all this to Shoya, Shoya starts to talk about how he had this dream in his coma. In this dream, Shoya was ready to give up on everything, to give up on life. He continues by saying and admitting that he was wrong, as he realized that even though life can just get so horrible and so tough sometimes, nothing is worth dying over, showing that Shoya has completely changed his perspective on life after his near-death experience. He has come to appreciate life even. And after Shoya finishes talking about his dream, he asks Shoko if she could teach him how to live, which is Shoya's way of saying to Shoko, help me live. Even if we face struggles and challenges, we'll face them together. Because on the other side of those hard experiences, there are things that are worth living for. When Shoya returns home from the hospital, he struggles once again with self-love and self-isolation. When he returns to school again, he avoids eye contact with every single person. When he sees all of his classmates again, they all welcome him back, and instead of communicating or saying hello to them, he just runs to the bathroom and just takes a breather, as this is all pretty overwhelming to Shoya. Shoya can't even look Tomohiro in the eye when he sees him again for the first time since waking up from his coma. But Shoya is trying to change. He wants to change. Before going back to school, we see him practice talking to people, and he legit rehearses what he is going to say to his old friends, as he plans to make up with every single one of them and apologize. One thing leads to another, with Shoya rekindling his friendship with Tomohiro and eventually the rest of the friend group. And this gives Shoya the courage to finally start changing his actions. When he's in public at a school fair, hundreds of people are around him, but he decides to stop covering his ears and to just listen to the noise and the conversations going around him. He also looks at all the people around him, and the big, fat, purple X's on everyone's face just drop. The reason that Shoya sees these big, fat, purple X's on everyone's face is because he purposely chooses to isolate himself from these people. He completely blocks them out of his life. But in this scene, Shoya just finally lets everything and everyone in. And instead of facing judgment or hate from others like he always thought he would, he experiences love. He looks around and sees his friends, his family, Shoko and her family, and he realizes that there's so many people in this world that care and love him, that he truly isn't alone. And he just starts to excessively cry. And the reason that Shoya starts to just bawl his eyes out is because he finally starts to feel an ounce of love for himself. After drowning in his own self-hatred for so many years, he's finally coming to love himself again. Arguably the most important love, the hardest love to achieve, is self-love. And even though I have seen the scene a total of 6 times now, it never fails to make me emotional. Like, I'm not bawling my eyes out to this scene, but I do feel so many emotions stir up inside me from seeing Shoya's journey of self-love and redemption end in such a heartwarming way. Now getting into why I relate to Shoya Ishida so much, and how he inspired me to change as a person. There are 2 main things that I really relate to when it comes to Shoya as a character. The first thing is his social anxiety. When we see Shoya tell Shoko that he stares at the ground because it's easier for him than looking people in the eye, I related to that line so freaking much, as this is legit me every single day. Every day I struggle to make just the simplest eye contact with others, whether that be when I walk past someone in a public setting, whether that be when I'm driving and there's someone in the car next to me or even across from me. Whatever setting it is, that's one of the things I mainly struggle with. My whole entire life, I have always avoided social situations. Whether that be a big event, or I'm with a big group, or even just a simple interaction with another person. person. Until I was about 17 years old, I could not go up to the till and order my own food whenever I went to a fast food restaurant or just a restaurant in general for that matter. I was just so terrified of talking to someone that I would either one, get someone that I know to order for me, or two, I just wouldn't order anything at all. Like I could be starving and I would just rather starve than go up and talk to a person. Literally the most simple interaction in the world, just ordering food, was something I was absolutely terrified of. Just saying hello to people when I walk past them can be a very uncomfortable thing for me. Growing up, I always kind of had this victim mindset in a way, as I'd always just think to myself, oh, I have social anxiety, it sucks ass to have, but there's nothing I can do about it. I can't just magically erase my social anxiety or become a social person overnight. But I was wrong. And the first thing that made me realize that I can really overcome my social anxiety is legit seeing Shoya in this movie overcoming his. Seeing Shoya actively want to change his ways and old habits, and then actually, of course, taking action to change when we see him towards the end of the movie and get his whole conclusion, changed my whole perspective on my social anxiety. Because in my mind, I'm like, why can't I do that? Why can't anyone that has this kind of issue overcome this? And that made me want to change. And don't get the wrong idea, I'm not like a social butterfly now or anything. I still struggle with social anxiety every single day. But I've noticed that my social anxiety has gotten better, especially over the course of the last 2 or so years. As I mentioned just a couple minutes ago with the whole not being able to go up to the till and like order my own food or whatever it may be, I can do that kind of thing now easily. Like I do it all the time. Simple interactions like that don't really bother me like they used to. And I actively try every single day to take just steps, even if it's the smallest steps in the world, to become a more social person and not let my social anxiety just control and dictate my life. Like even uploading videos on YouTube and getting so comfortable to the point where I show my face in these videos in a strange way has drastically helped my social anxiety and just helped me become a better overall communicator. And even though I'm talking about a fictional character here, if I never saw Shoya's character journey, I would have never wanted to change and try to overcome my own social anxiety. And this is what I mean by Shoya not only being super relatable, but also just being a very inspiring character. The second thing that makes Shoya so relatable to me is his depression / struggle with self-love. I've had a fair share of struggles with depression over the years, but when it comes to self-love, that is always something that I have struggled with my whole entire life. I've always struggled with self-confidence, and of course, having social anxiety does not help whatsoever when it comes to having confidence in yourself. But I lacked confidence in so many aspects of my life growing up, whether that be how I looked, whether that be me just feeling like a failure, me really wondering what my purpose is in life, me being at peace with myself and my surroundings. And there's so many aspects of self-love that I could just go on that I have struggled with, and I guarantee many of you watching this video have struggled with as well. And that's why I think when we see Shoya finally starting to come to love himself again, it's such a impactful and emotional scene, because it makes you realize that self-love is a very possible thing to achieve. The only reason that Shoya struggled with self-love for so long was because he just thought he was a garbage human being when that simply wasn't the case. But the moment that he decides to finally open himself up and change his ways and perspective, along with seeing just how many people care and love him, we see that he finally starts to love himself again. And this happened because Shoya had a mindset and perspective change, along with him actively changing his ways for the better. No matter who you are, what situation you're in, what you've done, what surroundings you're in, you can always choose to love yourself. You just have to be willing to. Shoya Ishida is one of the most beautifully written characters I have ever seen. From his self-redemption to overcoming his mental health struggles, he has to be one of the most relatable and inspiring characters that I have ever seen in fiction.